Well, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us as always. I always like to make a point of mentioning that I know your time is valuable and you have lots of choices. So definitely appreciate when you choose to spend your valuable time here with us. And today we're going to have a really interesting conversation about negotiating memories and the art of downsizing. And we're talking today with Angela Andrieux. So welcome, Angela. It's great to have you here.
Hi, Cindy. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me on the show. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, it's a timely conversation for me. And for our listeners, if you don't know Angela, she's a passionate fine art photographer, dedicated photography coach. She's got well over 15 years experience in the photography industry and also renowned for her ability to demystify complex and confusing technology. And we all probably know a thing or two about that. And she excels in helping others organize, edit, and protect their photos, which is something I'm keen to hear some tips on. And as a photography coach, she empowers individuals to harness that technology that's available out there. And instead of getting overwhelmed, use it so that you can stay organized, you can safeguard your media libraries, and express your own unique style through creative photo editing. So let's jump in. I know you have a unique perspective on managing memories, and I love that term. So can you share sort of your perspective with our listeners?
Well, so every time we click the shutter, we're capturing a moment in time. And each one of these memories is very precious to all of us. We each have our own sets of memories, but right now, for most people, they're scattered everywhere. We have them on our phones, we've got them maybe on our computers and hard drives. Perhaps you've been sharing things on social media for years, and that might be the only place that picture exists. What I aim to help people do is get all of those memories into a library that they can manage so they can protect them, find them when they want to look at them, and enjoy them and share them.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I do is just protect those memories and
Yeah.
make sure that you can enjoy them, you can share them, and then you can actually have them available to pass on to the next generation. And we're talking about not just our digital memories we have right now, but a lot of people are working through digitizing their analog memories. So if you had film photos, prints, other memorabilia that you've been storing, what to do with it, how to get
Yeah.
it preserved, and
Yeah.
how to keep it organized and accessible. So that's projects that I'm working on for my own family personally, and
Yeah.
I'm happy to give my insight to others as
Yeah.
well.
Well, I can't wait to dig into that. So listeners, you've been forewarned, get your pens and papers ready because or your computer, whatever you're going to be using, make sure to take notes. I know I am. And before we jump there though, I think, with all these ancestry.com and all these different sort of search providers, I think it's an interesting time we're living in because in some ways they're more interested than ever in connecting with family. And yet,
Mhm.
ironically, I think in this very busy world, we often feel like we have less time to actually get together. So family reunions used to be a big thing. They seem really daunting for a lot of people. How can we organize a successful virtual family reunion? I know something that you help encourage people to do.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great suggestion and something that can be a lot of fun. So, as you're getting these memories put together, let's say you're building up your library of photos, potentially you're collecting pictures from different generations and different people in your family. As you scan these images, you might not know who's in them, you might not know the stories behind them, but your cousin or your aunt or your grandmother might.
Yeah.
So what is a really fun idea to do is to get those people onto a Zoom call or a FaceTime or whatever method you want to use for
Yeah.
your digital meeting. Get everybody on there, share your screen, and start telling these stories. You can even record those meetings so that way you have like a record of what was said. So if you're not
Yeah.
taking that grade of notes, you can go back to it. So even having that video of that recording can go into your library as part of the official record for your family to keep these
Yeah.
things preserved.
That's a great idea. And it's funny as you say that because I know my cousin, after my aunt died, she was handing out photos to everybody and there were a huge pile of photos. We've got suitcases of them and nobody thought to ask when the people who could have were alive and we're stuck with photos, as you say, with people that we're not even sure what the connection is. Now, you talk a lot about family legacy as well, which I really love that piece of it. What are some easy ways that we can pass on a family legacy of some of these sort of hidden treasures that are getting dumped now?
So a big part of that is preserving all the little tiny details about those pictures that you can gather. So
Yeah.
on a lot of the older pictures, I know my grandmothers both were really good about writing little notes on the back.
Yeah.
Not everybody is good at that, but I have a lot of pictures that don't have that information. But even something as simple as the date or some of these other
Mm,
pictures, you can associate it with something that does have that information. Be like, okay,
yeah.
that's in front of the same house. That looks like everybody's wearing the same clothes. those all kind of belong together. Gathering up those little details and preserving them in the metadata, the digital metadata that goes along with that picture.
Yeah.
So if you have a scan photo, correct the date on it. That way you know approximately when that happened. So you can say, and the software that I use is called Mylio Photos, and it lets you put in what we call fuzzy dates or non-specific dates. So you can just say it's in this decade or it's in this
Yeah.
year. You don't have to have like an actual timestamp.
Yeah.
Get that date as close as possible. And that gives a reference point to future generations when they're looking at it. You
Yeah.
can also go through and add face tags. So it's got amazing facial recognition technology. Tag the people in the picture, talk to your family members that are still around,
Yeah.
find out who's in that picture that's important. Because sometimes they're going to be like, well, those are travel shots and we don't know most of the people there.
Yeah.
But find those things out, record as much of it as you can. Once that's in that digital metadata, make sure it's backed up. And then you can even have a hard drive that you pass down to your next generation that's, organized, has that data
Yeah.
there. It's not just pictures on a thumb drive with no reference or a box of images in the closet that they have to sort through.
Ah, so smart. And I'm totally guilty as charged because I'm smiling as you're saying that because my husband's mom, every picture you get, it's got the date, it's got the who, it's got the what. And I have boxes of photos from when the kids were young. And, it just seems so overwhelming because I'm like, I don't even know anymore what year this is. And I should, as if I recognize. So, but before we jump to sort of fixing some of that, what are some of the other, like, as you're saying this, I'm thinking there's all kinds of sort of social sides to these memories that we can sort of navigate or negotiate. Any other suggestions for the social sides of navigating our memories?
So as you're going through and you're finding pictures of people that maybe you haven't talked to for a while, it's a great opportunity to, click the share button and send it to that person and be like, hey, look what I just found. You remember this time? Either if it's something, a memory that you share, you can have a little bit of moment of reminiscing, maybe get on the phone, reconnect. Or if it's a memory that you weren't part of, but you can see that that person was there. Hey, can you tell me about what was happening in this time? And make a connection and get to know those people in your family that little bit better.
Uh,
It's really kind of a pivot point for increasing your what's what I'm looking for.
Connection, I think, is what
Yes,
comes to
connection I
mind for
think is
me.
exactly. I mean, there's people in our family we know pretty well, but there's always different levels of connection you can have.
Yeah.
And especially with some of those more distant relatives,
Yeah.
you can reach out and be like, hey, I just saw this picture of you. When's the last time you saw this picture of you?
Yeah.
And can you tell me about what happened?
Oh, I love
Like
that. And
there's
especially because we feel so disconnected, I think, today and with social media, everybody's just like so much superficial stuff going on. But I really, as you were saying that, I'm thinking of even old neighbors from when we've moved away and pictures of the kids
absolutely,
together when they were young or high school, looking back at some of those pictures. What a great way to connect in a meaningful way with somebody and share something, give them a smile, no doubt as well. So as a
absolutely.
recent empty nester myself, I'm finding myself nostalgic. I talked about that big box, and every once in a while, as I'm clearing through stuff out of the kids' rooms as they've been moving out, I come across these photos from when they were young. And I used to be scrupulous in saving photos. Back in the day when you actually got them printed and you took them and you
Yep.
had film, a very novel concept. But I feel like I'm really sort of losing history in the digital age. So you talked a bit to it, but how do we protect our precious memories in the face of today's technological advancements? How can we keep up with that?
So that's a really great question. And I think the challenge for a lot of people is with digital, we create so many. When we had film cameras, we're working with a roll of 12 or 24 or
Yeah.
36, and it cost, X amount of dollars to go get
Yeah.
those developed and processed, and you get back your prints and you would put them in your album and you'd make your little labels for those maybe 36 pictures. Or if you had a few rolls, like you might have 100 pictures to go through if it was from a
Yeah.
vacation. That was really kind of manageable. Now we're out and about. We have a camera with us at all times because we all have a cell phone.
Yeah.
I actually heard a funny conversation at a restaurant this weekend. An older gentleman, I'm going to guess he's probably in his 70s, was, talking about his camera that he was carrying around. And this other lady who was with him, I'm not sure if it was his wife or what, but she's
Yeah.
like, your phone takes pictures too. You don't have to carry that. It was the cutest conversation. I love
Yeah.
it. I was just kind of like being a conversation hitchhiker at that moment.
Yeah.
But we all have this with us and we're all capturing little details of our lives. And some of them are important and some of them are just,
Yeah.
noise. Like I
Yeah.
take a picture in the parking garage to remember where I parked.
Yeah.
Or I'm walking through, local big box store going, that might be a good Christmas present for
Yeah.
somebody. Like, let me take a picture of that and send it to my mom and see if my dad
Yeah.
would like it.
Yeah.
Those kinds of things clutter up the rest of those important memories.
Yeah.
Not to mention, it's so easy to, when you're at, say, your kid's sports game, you sit there and rattle off, 10, 15, 20 shots of the same thing because you can
Yeah.
sit there and hold that button
Yeah.
and you're wanting to get the best shot. So culling those down. So that's a process that we can do with these digital images is first, we can get rid of some of that clutter. So I mentioned My Leah Photos. There's a couple of really cool little tools in there that you can say, tell it to find all your screenshots.
Yeah.
You can go through and clean up some of that unnecessary clutter in your library. So you just get that out of there.
Yeah.
Then you have those burst mode shots where you've taken 15, 20, sometimes more photos,
Yeah.
but maybe only one or two of them actually have a really good expression or have the
Yeah.
gesture that you're looking for. You can go through, find those couple that really matter. And there's a cool tool called Quick Review that groups together images like that, or actually that one's declutter. It'll group together those burst mode photos and let you go through and pick out those one or two that really matter, and then you can get rid of the rest. And by narrowing that down with our digital images, finding the ones that are most important is what makes that more manageable. Because when you're dealing with 50 photos that you want to preserve and tell stories about, it's much easier than looking at 250 or 1,000.
Yeah. Yes.
So whittling that down and then picking those best ones to attach those stories, to attach the names, to make sure those little details are preserved. And that way people have something to go back to, because unfortunately, 50 to 100 years from now, is anybody going to want to look through
Absolutely.
our digital collections? Because they're honestly out of control for most of us, myself included.
Yeah. Well, even our food shots, right? As you say,
Yes,
50 years from now, who's going to give a royal rat's ass, frankly, about, your chocolate souffle at a restaurant that probably no longer
exactly.
exists. So I've got it. Now,
Yeah.
tied to that, like I recently had to deal with the loss of my mom and clearing out her worldly possessions. It comes with this sandwich generation. And it
Mhm.
was tough to sort, what to keep, what to toss. Do you have any insights on how we can make that easier, Angela?
So, I mean, that's a really tough thing and something that, my family is going through even many years after my grandmother passed. So she passed, I want to say it was in 2018. And my mom and I were just actually discussing this yesterday of stuff that she has from cleaning out their house that she's like, we still have all this stuff here and I'm not sure what to do with it.
Yeah.
What do you get rid of? What do you keep? As we go through stuff, if we think of somebody who might find that thing precious, or maybe the person who even gave that to them,
Yeah.
we're trying to give them back to them.
Yeah.
When it comes to pictures and memorabilia and things like that, what we did with all of her video footage, she had a bunch of 8mm and all these different formats.
Yeah.
My dad had them digitized. We sent them off to a service
Yeah.
and had them professionally digitized for us. We had thumb drives made for my parents and for all of the grandkids. So we each have a
Nice.
copy of all those home videos. And then my dad sat down with a spreadsheet with each one of those videos,
Yeah.
and for who he could recognize, labeled who was in each of those videos and what they
Wow.
were doing.
What a
So, I mean,
gift.
that's a tremendous resource, but all of
Yeah.
that takes time and resources. So once that was done, once that digitization was done, I think those actual film things went away because most of them were degrading. Some of them were in pretty bad shape. Once they were digitized, we kept the digital copies. I think those originals went away. Now, when it
Yeah.
comes to our paper photos, gosh, that is so hard. And I go back and forth on this all the time.
Yeah.
I've been working on a project for my other side of the family, my other grandmother, and I've been scanning in her photo albums.
Yeah.
And she didn't want the albums back, but she wanted the pictures back. So the albums themselves were actually, she's in her 90s. So
Yeah.
managing these big photo albums is a bit much for her, but
Yeah.
she still wanted her prints. So I put them back into acid-free envelopes and gave those back to her. And then the whole family now has access to all of these
Yeah.
digital images that I've been scanning.
Nice.
And you can do that yourself. You can outsource it. It just depends on, well, it depends on a number of things. And we can talk more about that. And ultimately, those pictures, that negotiation was, she wants her pictures back. She doesn't want them in the albums. And
Yeah.
that's what we decided. Like I was
Yeah.
willing to do whatever she wanted, honestly. If she wanted them back in the albums, I would have remade them for her
Yeah.
hands down, no problem.
Yeah.
But it's really tough and it has to be kind of what feels right in the moment. Because I don't want to tell anybody to get rid of those paper
Yeah.
photos because some of them are so precious and frankly, some of them are so old and
Yeah.
Ours have newspaper clippings sometimes in there and all sorts of stuff. But if you can downsize it into something, maybe instead of a giant album, get them into
Yeah.
boxes and into, archival boxes, things that are acid free, that are going to be a little bit better preserved. Don't put them in the garage. Don't put them in the attic where, temperatures are crazy.
Yeah.
If you're going to keep them, you have to take the steps to make sure that they're going to be preserved at least halfway
Yeah.
decently.
Yeah. And I've been thinking about it a lot lately because it's kind of tragic. You see all the, whether estate sales or whatever, and there's just albums and albums and boxes of pictures, entire histories that somebody created that are just getting thrown away and not being saved. And I've gone to some resorts recently where it's become trendy to just put up some of these old photos of random people that have no connection, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that photo meant so much to somebody, right? And
Yeah.
what role do you find that, like, I find in negotiations generally emotion plays a role and we try and ignore it. What role do you find emotion plays in these particular negotiations as we're sort of culling or creating? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, for me, the emotion is this is something that somebody I love touched.
Yeah.
How can I possibly get rid of it? This is
Yeah.
something I go through. It's with that grandmother that passed back in 2018. I have a bunch of her stuff. And this actually, just this past weekend, there was a little handbag. And it's not my style. It's
Yeah.
cute, but it's not my style. But
Yeah.
I grabbed it out of her stuff. I was like, I'm going to keep this because it reminded me of her. And finally, I'm just like, I'm hearing her voice in my head going, why? Why
Yeah.
are you doing this? Because she was so pragmatic and be like,
Yeah,
get
it's
rid of
true.
it, Angela. Why are you holding on to this? And I finally put it in the, bin for, because I know somebody else will absolutely love
Yeah.
that little handbag. But, it's trying to get to that point where you can kind of separate the memory from the emotion.
Yeah.
And that takes time. That's never going to happen right after a year, 5 years, even after somebody passes, especially if they were super close to you.
Yeah.
And everybody's way of dealing with grief and
Yeah.
that emotional attachment is different. So
Yeah.
what my mom could maybe get rid of a year after a loss might take me 2 or 3.
Yeah.
And everybody's, you just have to kind of respect that. So that's the part of the negotiation that I think has to be very gently
Yeah.
done
Yeah.
with these types of things, because it's not just a physical object, it's something that an emotion is
Yeah.
very strongly tied
Yeah.
to.
But I love the idea as you were saying that, it really struck me in a way that it hasn't before, about the memory piece, right? We often hold on to the stuff when really we'd be able to recycle that stuff to other people who could better use it and appreciate it
Yeah.
if we keep better track of those memories, as you say, digitize them, because
Mhm.
that takes you right back to the moment. Now, tell us about your, what is it, the 3-2-1 method, I think, and how we can use it.
Yeah.
So we get some practical, all right, get ready to dig in to get your photos organized.
So the 3-2-1 backup scenario, it's one of my favorite things that I share with my clients, and I do classes on it and all sorts of stuff. It boils down to having 3 copies of your data on at least 2 different types of media, with one of them offsite.
Ah,
So what that
okay.
covers is basically you have your working copy. So that's,
Yeah.
what you're browsing and going through all the time. You have a backup copy that you keep, maybe an external hard drive separate from your original copy. So you have another copy there in your home.
Yeah.
That is going to help you in case your computer crashes or the first hard drive crashes, you have a backup on another device. That offsite copy is your disaster recovery. So if your house is flooding or there's a
Yeah.
fire or God forbid somebody breaks in and steals your stuff,
Yeah.
you have that in the cloud offsite copy that you can restore from.
Yeah.
That's typically not a good idea for most people. A lot of people think, oh, my stuff's in the cloud, it's safe. In my opinion, that's just one location.
Yeah.
So, and that location is controlled by somebody else. So that's a little bit risky.
Yeah.
It's a good thing to have, but it should never be the only place you keep your stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Well, that's great advice, and I love that, because and we all assume it's not gonna happen to us, but I know we had a very unexpected kitchen fire that had disastrous the dishwasher, faulty part, set the whole thing on fire. Friends of mine just recently had a big flood in their place, and of course, what do you keep downstairs? A lot of those photos and all of those memories. So that's
yeah.
such great advice. Now, what's one of the most surprising things that you've discovered sort of about our memories or how people treat them when as you do this work with your clients?
Probably the most surprising thing is that most people don't have a backup.
Yeah.
Most people don't know where their stuff is. When they start thinking about it, they kind of start freaking out, going, oh my gosh, what if something like this happens? Because I've seen it. Like
Yeah.
a lot of people, like, my child's first 5 years are sitting here on this cell phone.
Yeah.
Well, what if you're out on the lake and that falls in the lake and that phone is
Yep.
gone?
We've had that happen.
You want to make sure you have your stuff protected. So the amount of people who think their stuff is backed up that aren't,
Yeah.
that's also astounding.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
that's probably the thing is I'm so paranoid about data protection because I've had data loss myself and I've seen it happen to so many of my clients, and I want to save people that stress and that heartache.
yeah. Well, and I was cringing as you were saying that because my husband has a sanitation business. He has like portable restrooms and things. And that exactly all of his photos from all of our trips to, Antarctica and from when the kids, like years and years and years of photos. And it dropped into one of the portable toilets. Needless
Oh
to say, you're not going
no.
in digging after that
Oh,
baby, and just gone. And he thought they were all backed up, exactly what you said, Angela, and poof,
yeah.
just gone. So just sort of quick step by step. So let's say, take me as the example now. I've got this box of stuff that's out there with all of these precious photos. How do I start? I think for a lot of our listeners now, they're like, oh, the thought of just starting this is so overwhelming. So what would you suggest for me? What's the best way for me to kickstart that process to be saving these beautiful memories?
So I think the first question I would probably ask somebody is, do you have more time or do you have more money?
Okay, fair. Yeah,
So, because there's two ways you can approach that box of photos. One is to scan them in yourself,
yeah,
do the work yourself, which does still take some resources. You have to make sure you have a scanner and you have the right equipment and all of
yeah,
that. Or if your time is pretty limited right now, but maybe you're making decent money, you can outsource that. And that's a very valid option. And a lot of times that outsourcing is less costly than people realize, especially weighed against needing to buy equipment to
yeah.
do it right and get high quality archival scans.
And
So,
valuing your time. I just want to
and
add,
your time,
because a lot of people,
exactly.
we don't value in our time. So yeah. Okay.
That's probably the first thing I would suggest to think about. The next is,
Just before you go to the next, just so, because I suspect some of the listeners are like me, like what would I even Google or look for somebody to do that? What am I looking for if I decide, hey, I do want to see how much it's going to cost to have somebody else do that for me? That would be such a relief.
there is a group called the Photo Managers. It's a professional organization and it's a grouping of small businesses around the country, I think probably around the world, that do these types of services. So I would try to find somebody local.
Yeah.
But there are national services that you can send your stuff off to. I think like Scan My Photos.
Okay.
There's a bunch of
So
them
if,
out
if
there.
I just Googled scanning photos for,
Yeah, scan
or
old photos.
providers to scan photos or something, I'd have options there. That's awesome.
Exactly. But
Okay.
definitely look up photo managers, see if there's somebody local that you can work with, because that's
Yeah.
a lot more comfortable if you're handing off those physical
Yeah.
memories
Yeah.
and that's the only copy you have.
Yeah.
You're handing them off to another person. Personally, I feel better handing that to another local provider than I do
Of course.
boxing them up and shipping them.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So, because
I
you just,
agree.
you never know
Okay.
what can happen in shipping. Not, 95% of the time it's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
But, so and also I like to shop and support local as much as
Yeah.
possible.
You and me both. I mean, I love that you said that. That's fabulous. So, and
And
so
they're everywhere.
scanning, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say photo managers are everywhere.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's great. I hadn't even thought of that, to be honest, other than as a distant kind of whatever. I love that idea. And the same with digitizing some of this stuff too. Even the old, I'm thinking, as you say, like the old videos that we had that are on totally different formats, like they're going to end up getting lost or degraded. So I love this idea about get them out, get them protected in a format that's current. I think
Yes.
it's a beautiful idea. Now, for the photos, if we want to scan, you'd said make sure you have the right kind of equipment. And again, just for our listeners, what kind of equipment should they be looking for? Like not necessarily name brand, but what kinds of equipment do they want to make sure they've got, and how easy is it to get it?
So it really depends on what's the type of media that you need to scan the most of. I have a few different things at my disposal that I work with. First one is a sheet fed scanner. It's the Epson Fast Photo 680. And this thing I can pop in a stack of like 30 photos into, and it scans at high resolution, 600
Wow.
DPI, and it is ridiculously fast.
Yeah. Okay.
But that they all have to be in good shape. They've
Yeah.
all got to be the same shape, and it can
Yeah.
only go up to an 8 by 10.
Okay.
If
That's
you're pulling
great.
things out of a photo album and they've got adhesives on the back, or
Yeah.
maybe they're a little bit, crinkled at the corners, those are not good candidates to put through this machine.
Yeah.
Also, things that are a little bit more fragile, really old pictures, things like that. That's where you're going to want to either have a flatbed scanner or have a high resolution camera. So if you are somebody who also enjoys photography, you've got a really good camera, you can do what's called camera scanning, which is basically taking a picture of the photo. You use a macro lens, you get it straight up above it, you light it to where there's no glare, and you can take a picture.
Yeah.
That's what actually a lot of these professional photo managers do who scan media for you. That's their preferred way of doing it because you can get
Really?
the best quality.
Wow.
But the sheet fed scanner for most home scanners, I also have like a multifunction HP printer all in one thing that has a flatbed scanner. So anything that I can fit on there that I can't put through my sheet feeder, I scan with that.
Yeah.
So it
Okay.
doesn't have to be like the latest, greatest, or the most
Yeah.
professional thing. You can get the job done. There are also camera scanning apps on your phone. So like PhotoMine is one that I love.
Yeah.
It's also got some great AI built into it to where if you take a picture and it's not quite straight, it'll straighten the edges for you. It'll even do a little photo restoration on it. It can do different effects.
Yeah.
And it's really quite good. The thing with phones is the sensors are not as big. So what I say for things like that is if you're at a family member's house and that's the only time you're going to have access to those pictures, take the picture with your phone.
Yeah.
Get a camera scanning app. Google makes one that's free. PhotoMine, they have a free version, but the paid one is better.
Okay.
Go figure.
Yeah.
There's several out there, but take the picture and at least that way you have a copy of it and it's saved and digitized in some fashion. So there's a lot of different ways you can go about it at varying levels of quality.
Okay.
Ultimately, you're probably going to get the best quality if you outsource it to somebody who that's what they do professionally because they're going to have the best equipment for it.
Yeah.
But you can certainly get the job done at home. That Epson sheet fed scanner that I mentioned, it's not inexpensive. I want to say it's about $500 or $600.
Yeah.
So what I suggest to people who are really interested in that is if you have a family grouping, let's say some cousins or siblings who are interested in doing this project, pool your money, buy
Share
it,
the
and then
cost.
send it around and then you can share the pictures with each other.
Yeah. That's a great idea. Well, this has been a great kickstart for me, and I'm sure for our listeners as well. I've just got stacks of it, and between the old print ones that I have, as well as the just literally thousands from the trips that we've taken on our phone together, and you have inspired me and given me some great ideas as well about how to use them for social networking in more creative and fun ways as well. And not to mention the legacy piece. So I think that's beautiful. And I was doing what you're saying as well with my mom, all the stuff where I saw where the kids had made cards for my mother and that. I put them in little bundles and I gave them a choice. Do you want to keep this? These are a bunch of cards you made for Nanny when you were young, and so beautiful. Now,
Yeah.
I get this has been super fun. Any last thoughts you want to share that are sort of must do tips or thoughts that you have that you want to make sure you share with our listeners?
I just want to kind of jump back to that 3, 2, and backup. Make sure you're protecting your stuff. Make sure you have more than one copy of your media and automate the process as much as possible.
Yeah.
Because we're human, we forget, we procrastinate, and you want to make sure that those things are kind of running behind the scenes to protect yourself. So that's probably my biggest tip
Yeah.
there. And then I mentioned earlier Mylio Photos, the software I use to organize my photo library.
Yeah.
I do have a discount code, a 15% discount code for your audience. If you
Beautiful.
go to mylio.com and at purchase, go ahead and enter in the coupon code negotiation.
That's fantastic. And if you haven't already, flip that to me and I'll make sure to put that in the show notes as well. So for our listeners, if you didn't catch that, either re-listen to the episode or just check out the show notes below and we'll make sure you get that link as well. And where can people learn more about you, Angela, if they want to follow up? You said you teach some courses in that as well. Where's the best place
I
for them to go?
do. So you can find me at angelaandrieux.com. That's Angela, Andrieux. I have the weirdest spelling last name, .com. The weirdest spelling part, that's not in there. That was just me
Yeah.
saying that. I'm also on Instagram at Ange Andrew. That's ANGANDRIEUX. You can find me on Facebook, all the popular
Sure.
socials. And
Okay.
then you can also find me at mylio.com. I'm one of their product evangelists. I teach a lot of classes for them, how to use the software.
Nice.
And if you want to learn more about scanning and preserving your family history, you can certainly find me in their community all the time.
Beautiful. And do you do done for you, by the way? Like
What
if
was that?
Do you do like sort of a done for you? If people come and say, I don't want to have to deal with this, I don't want to learn how to deal with it, I'm going to send you all my stuff. Do you do that for people or do you teach
I
them how
don't
to
do
fish?
that, but I know
Okay.
people who do, and I can connect you.
Okay, beautiful. Well, we'll make sure again to have all of that in the show notes. And normally I like to end, Angela, by asking what's one of the greatest mindset shifts you've had in your life? Doesn't have to be about photos at all, just one of those aha moments where you see things differently in the world and show up differently.
I would say becoming a photographer has given me one of those greatest mindset
Mm.
shifts because it slows me down and I tend to see details in the world around me a little bit differently.
Yeah.
I love that it makes me pause and recognize little beautiful things that are maybe even in the midst of something not so great. And being a photographer has trained me to better see those.
I love that. And again, for our listeners, you don't have to be a professional photographer. What, as you said that, I just got chills because what a beautiful way to go through life. If you are having a really rough day, just take a pause and imagine yourself as a photographer and hold a lens up to pay attention to your surroundings and just find something beautiful that you can be grateful for in that moment. I think that's a gorgeous philosophy. So thanks so much for sharing with us today, Angela. I know that was a whirlwind of information and you gave us loads in a short period of time. So appreciate that. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. It's great to be here.
And for our listeners, I hope you've really got some great value from this. I know I am going to go grab that box and put it out on my dining room table. I love the outsource idea. I know I'm going there. And make sure to give the gift of sharing. Share this episode with other people in your life who you know have been talking about this, or you, when you're on vacation and you know that people are taking just hundreds, if not thousands of photos, and making sure that they can safeguard those precious memories and be able to negotiate their family legacies in ways that matter. So make sure to share. And before we sign off today, just wanted to share some ways that we can work together. If you're looking to uplevel your negotiation skills because you recognize that all of life is a negotiation, I've got everything from online to group to my signature VIP experiences available to help you better leverage your innate power to get more of what you want and deserve in life. If that sounds interesting, check it out at artoffemininenegotiation.com. And make sure to grab a copy of my book if you haven't done that yet. Same name, Art of Feminine Negotiation, How to Get What You Want from the Boardroom to the Bedroom. And that's a wrap for this episode. So until next time, go forth and negotiate your best life on your terms so you can stop missing out and start getting more of what you want and deserve from the boardroom to the bedroom. Until next time, take care.